Judd, a man's been murdered. Now we gotta do whatever we can to find out who killed him.
Well, it seems to me that that's your problem, Deputy.
Are you refusing to take me back up where you found that horse?
Deputy, I'm plumb tuckered out. I'd like to go home.
I'm asking you one more time. Are you refusing?
Yes.
Then you better come on back into town with us.
Now, wait a minute, Deputy. You got no right to...
This gives me the right. Stop your arguing and come along. Well, until I get some evidence either on Carter or the furs, it's your word against his. Huh?
You mean you're gonna let him stay out there at the Ponderosa?
Haas says he's too sick to be moved.
You got my word for it. He ain't gonna get away.
Well, what makes you think that your word is good enough, Cartwright?
It's good enough for me. I'm putting Jim Layton in Haas's custody until we find out about Amos Carter, one way or another. Good day, gentlemen. You actually heard these two men say they were going to break into that safe?
Well, no, we didn't hear them say it in that exact words, but that's what they meant.
Why don't you let me decide what they meant? And just tell me what they said.
All right. Now, the one man said that they had a good view of the street and the bank from their window.
That's right. And the other fellow said that there wasn't one bank robber in the whole country, not one out of 1,000, that could break into that safe, didn't he?
Right.
Is that all?
Is that all? Is that all? How much do you need? It's obvious what they plan to do, Clem. Now, it's your duty to get over to that hotel and arrest them.
That's right.
Arrest them. For what? Because they've got a good view of the bank from their window. Or because they think the bank has a good safe. They haven't done anything.
But they are going to do something. They're going to do it.
Oh, I'm sure there are lots of people in Virginia City going to do something wrong someday. But I can't arrest them until they do it.
And that is your final word, huh?
That is my final word. Now, boys, the law is the law. I appreciate your concern. And I'll keep an eye on these two. If they make a move, I'll get them.
Well, I think you're making a big mistake, Clem. A big mistake. And I want you to remember one thing. Remember what they say about an ounce of prevention.
The law is my job. I can handle it. And without your help?
Come on, Hoops.
Hold it. This scattergun's loaded with birdshot and rock salt. The first man that makes a fighting move will eat stand up for a month now. What's going on here?
Philly was trying to collect a $1,000 reward.
Are you serious?
That's what the man said.
I'll stand here and argue the law with you, ma'am. We got us a prosecutor, and town's paid to do that.
It's been nice, Sheriff. My key, please.
Oh, you won't be needing your key. You're going with me. I'll lock you up.
On what charge?
Suspicion of inciting to murder.
And just how long do you think you can hold me?
Long enough to make you see a few facts and realize you're making a big mistake.
He just popped up, Major. I didn't see him or hear him come in.
My name's Candy.
Where you from?
Any town within 500 miles east of here, I've been there.
What's your business?
Trying to stay alive?
How'd you find this camp?
Simple, I heard it. I walked upwind of the voices. I saw the guards. I didn't want to bother them, so I just walked on in.
But if this was a regular Army detail, you never got past those guards.
Or maybe not, but I sure would have tried. Well, do you think that vote of thanks could be stretched to include a horse and a saddle? You recall that Paiute kind of shot mine out from under me?
Yeah, I recall. Yeah, I guess it could include that much. And more, maybe. We're gonna need some roundup hands once we get back to the ranch.
It'll be hard work, but one thing for sure, the Paiute won't be shooting your horse out from under you.
All right. All right for a while. But it's got to cut both ways. I can leave anytime I get the notion, and you can send me down the road, same way.
Sounds fair enough. Yeah, I guess it sounds fair enough. Mister, you got yourself a job.
Hey, would you say that our world-wise cowhand has been smitten?
Smitten? Well, if he hasn't been, he's doing the best job of pretending I've ever seen.
You just can't forget the past.
Yes, you can.
My world began when I met you, Laura. No yesterdays. Just today. And a whole lot of tomorrows.
Candy, you're going to listen to me whether you want to or not.
Listen to what? What a big ladies' man your brother is?
No, I ain't here to defend little Joe. I do, however, believe him. I don't think he has any interest in Laura other than maybe as a friend or maybe as the woman you're going to someday be married to.
You're wasting your time, Hoss.
No, a fella talking with a friend ain't wasting his time.
I said you're wasting your time.
You know, Candy, if I was in love with a gal, I mean really in love with her, I think I'd want to give her every chance in the world.
It's dirt. It's only dirt. Oh.
It's your cousin Will.
Howdy, Will.
It's Hoss.
Hoss?
Little Joe.
Well, a pleasure to see you.
Little Joe?
Adam.
Adam?
Like Lazarus rising from the dead. Welcome to the Ponderosa, cousin.
Look, Pa, we know he's a Cartwright. We know he's a relative, but how do we know he's telling the truth?
I may not be the best judge of character in the world, but I think, and not because he's a Cartwright or a relative, I think that basically he's an honest man.
Yeah, but, Paul, how are we going to persuade him to give himself up?
I don't know. But at least let's show a little faith in him. Bullet holes in these plates?
That's right. I put them there myself. Just in case I didn't get a chance to turn them over to the law.
Did you forget that I knew your father? We were boys together. We grew up together. I went to sea, but whenever I came back, we managed to meet somewhere, somehow. We'd talk and plan and dream. But there comes a time when a man stops dreaming and settles down to make one dream a reality, like I did, like your father would have done if he'd lived. What about you?
Not me. And not my father. I knew him better than you did.
But there's one thing that we both know about him. He was a proud man, and he was proud of his name. And he would never have done what you want to do. Discard his name, bury it, run off to China or wherever, on the pretext that it's adventure. Not John Cartwright. Maybe Will Cartwright. But not John.
You should have let me go with him. You could have all been killed.
Well, and after you just decided to keep the Cartwright name, we couldn't let the likes of them change that.
We ain't about to lose a cousin that easily.
Especially when we've hardly had a chance to get acquainted yet.
And give it a little time. You'll get used to us.
All for one, huh?
Well, it's better than one all alone.
Well, that kind of thing is going to take some getting used to.
Well, take your time, Will. Take your time. You might get to like the idea.
Ben's my uncle. And I got 3 cousins. Their names are Adam, Huss, and Little Joe.
Hey, Will, I was just wondering, maybe you ought to go along and catch that stage. There's gonna be another one through here for the next couple of days.
Push, push, push.
Hey, you know, boy, he's got the right name. He's liable to turn into a pretty good Cartwright after all, reckon?
Well, I don't know. You never know.
So now we both face the truth.
Well, I knew how I felt, but...
Me too. If we hadn't both been so conscious of Adam, we would have realized what was happening weeks ago. That kiss last night shocked me into facing it.
Adam, there was never anything behind your back.
I know. Neither one of you could. I told you I understood.
I'll be packed and gone by tonight.
But you can't do that, Will. You gotta take Laura with you.
No, this doesn't change anything.
I suppose I haven't told Laura the truth because I was afraid of hurting her.
So now you're making a sacrifice so I can have her?
No.
Look, I admire what you're trying to do, but it just won't work.
Will, I swear I'm telling you the truth.
I hope that someday Laura does marry you. She'll be a lucky girl.
Now you go to him. See, I don't need you. And he doesn't have an excuse now for not marrying you, has he?
Oh, Adam, thank you. Thank you. Will?
You're the famous sheriff, Virginia City. You give up carrying your guns?
That's right. Ain't gonna be no gunplay.
Everybody run away?
I ordered the town off the street, so go ahead, do what you come to do and get on out.
Nobody's gonna try and stop us.
I don't want to see nobody get hurt.
You're smart. Money ain't worth getting hurt for. Yes, sir. When you get old, you get smart.
You're gonna be replaced.
Replaced? You're pulling my leg.
I wish I was.
But this is my job. Nobody's gonna take my job.
Oh, yes, they are. Half the council has voted to let you go.
But they can't do that. I'm a duly
Yes,
elected...
they can, Roy. Just as soon as they vote me in power of the council, you go.
Well, Adam, let me just say this. It's kind of rough when you build your whole life around something or somebody and then lose it. After my wife died, I was really lost. Maybe if we had some children, it wouldn't have been so bad, but she was the only family I had, so that's why I had to go out and get myself another family.
Another family?
Yeah, people of Virginia City, they've been my family for years now. It's my job to take care of them. I've always given you my best. And as far as I know, I never let you down. I never asked anything in return because all I was doing was my job. But now I am. I'm going to ask you for something. I'm going to ask you to let me handle this thing in my own way. Now, if I didn't think that I could do a good job, I'd quit. Now, Ben, I ain't going to argue that legal point with you, but you're just going to have to get rid of that elephant.
I know, Roy.
You want to pay cash for those peanuts, or should I put it on your bill?
Put it on my bill. All right, come on, Sheba. Now, let's go. Sheba, come on.
One word from him and she does as she pleases.
All right. But just as soon as that darn elephant is finished eating those peanuts, you, Roy Coffey, are coming with me officially to call on Mr. Angus Tweedy.
Yes, sir.
$200. Did you hear him say $200, Roy?
Just turning her into hard cash.
That's plain blackmail. That's what it is. Just ordinary plain blackmail.
Then it all depends on which end you're on.
Roy, if I didn't know better, I'd swear that you were in cahoots with him.
I'm just trying to be impartial, Ben.
Impartial? Roy, I campaigned for you in your last election. That was the last election.
Now, wait a minute, Ben. I'm just trying to do my job.
I ain't gonna pay nobody no $200 to take this bag of pachyderm off my hands.
Oh, Ben, I'm in luck. I was afraid maybe you snuck out of town before you bought my beer.
You know, Roy, I always thought you were kind of a soft-hearted old coot.
Well, what have I done now?
Might have Doc Crane look in on the little girl. You know, William said she was kind of sick.
Ben, I already sent for the doc. Now, if you got any more sage advice for this poor old stupid sheriff, I'm listening.
Well, Roy, as a matter of fact, I have.
Oh, you have?
Get yourself a beer and cool off.
That's just what I intended to do. 2 of them, in fact.
was as if the earth swallowed them up. There wasn't nary a trace.
Have a beer.
Thanks, Roy.
No.
Jamie, maybe you didn't understand what Paul said.
Oh, I understand. We thought you'd be as happy about the adoption as we are.
Why should I be? Y'all just feel sorry for me, that's all.
Now, Jamie, that's not true. We've always felt you were part of our family. We just want to make it legal. It's something we've been thinking and wanting for some time.
Look, Mr. Cartwright, you don't have to make any excuses to me. I'm a man, and well, almost anyways. And I can pull my own weight around this ranch. And anytime at all, you don't want me around anymore, all you have to do is say so, all right?
You're not losing faith in April, are you? I mean, she did her best for you out there, you know. Did you tell her that?
No, I guess I didn't.
You should. Fear is a thing a dog can smell, Jamie. If April thinks you doubt her, where's she going to get the strength and the heart to win from?
Hey, April. You're the best. You know that. The best in the whole world. April, you'll show them all out there. You'll show them all. Okay? So are you. I mean, woman. You're beautiful, too.
Now, you stop that. You're going to give me a swollen head.
I already have one.
There, that's to make it all better.
Loving somebody and losing them, that hurts. Even when you know it's impossible, it hurts. But that's part of living. But to love, to give, to care for someone, that's part of living, too. The hurt eventually will fade away, and the love will stay. I don't suppose what I'm saying makes too much sense to you now. But it will. It will. Come home, Jamie. When you're ready to.
Get out of here, Jamie, before I throw you out.
You made fun of her just like you made fun of us. Just because she couldn't ride a horse or chop wood. Or things that don't even matter. Well, I'll tell you. She's good. And she's kind. And she's beautiful. Everybody loves her. I went to your house earlier today. She told me not to, but I went anyway. And I saw just what you did to her.
Shut up.
She thought you were so great. That's the crazy part about it. She thought you were so great. She did everything she could. Using your fists on somebody as nice as her. What kind of a man are you? I pity you.
So I'm sure that's just a small sampling of some. I have to say with Clem, that scene that I picked, it's funny because the guy first calls him sheriff, and then the rest of it, the guy keeps going deputy, 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 deputy. So I don't know if it was a flub or did the guy really think he was the sheriff and then read his badge, but it was sort of weird. So I just cut out the sheriff part because I knew he wasn't the sheriff yet. Anybody have any comments about any of the recurring characters, as we like to call them?
Bettina has a comment.
Yes, Bettina.
Yeah, Guy Williams. It's like I think I would have liked him if he'd been a recurring character that popped in every once in a while after we first met him. But we meet him and then he gets his own episodes. And it's like, why are the Cartwrights supporting characters now? This kind of stinks. And yeah, I enjoyed that Joe really wants him gone. Adam remembers him as, they were both kids together, but Joe's like, get your stuff and get out of my house. My daddy don't love you.
Joe doesn't need another brother.
And then they, mercifully got rid of Laura by her riding off with Will. But I think it would have just been better if they introduced him, sat out a couple episodes, came in for a couple episodes, sat out,
Well, wasn't he supposed to be not a permanent, but wasn't he supposed to kind of be a more permanent replacement, or no, Andy? Because they knew Purnell was leaving at that point, didn't they?
Well, you're talking about real life, and I think Bettina is talking about fiction.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm talking about.
They were writing a lot with him in it, so it seemed like they were establishing him a lot, right?
Giving her a blue dress to wear.
But in his biography, the woman who wrote it got to know him really, really well, and he was offered the role of Will Cartwright, and he believed, of course, there's two sides to every story, or three sides, one side, the other, and the truth lies somewhere in between. And he's grinning, that he was sold on a bill of goods that was not true. And he had said that the cast made his life miserable, that no one would do table readings with him, they wouldn't speak to him. There's probably a little truth to that, but I can't imagine that a group of professional actors would be such jerks to someone. I had read, and Andy could probably verify if this is true or not, Michael Landon resented that Guy Williams could come in and get paid as much as the rest of them when they had built the show up from the beginning. And I totally get that. Because, here he has before, opening credit cred, right? Because he's not like Clay, who's a guest star. So I'm sure there's a lot more to it than what his biography says, what anyone else would have said. There's truth in there somewhere.
Well, I could try to tackle the topic briefly. Purnell Roberts, as many of you may know, was not the happiest camper on the set. There were others who were unhappy too and complained about the quality of the scripts, but Purnell complained better than any of the others. And so David Dortort was fearful of the day when Purnell Roberts' contract would end and he would depart the Ponderosa. So as Roz pointed out, he wanted to have a bit of insurance in case Purnell made good his threat. So in anticipation of that, he and I guess Frank Cleaver, his story editor, sort of put their heads together and came up with a new character, the brother of Ben Cartwright, a big, bad, notorious, questionable, immoral kind of character in the Old West with a deadly reputation and the ability to outshoot anyone and anything you can imagine. And I believe then Guy Williams was hired to play the part. Well, this did not sit well with the rest of the cast, principally Michael Landon. And so a compromise was reached and the concept was revised so he would not be Ben's brother, but the son of Ben's brother. And he would not have the reputation as a notorious, invincible gunslinger, but a human with some human problems and human frailties and deficiencies and character flaws. And Guy Williams agreed to do the part, and trouble really began, I guess, when they started production. And Patina's right. Michael Landon complained loudly and vociferously more than anyone else. And I think I talked about the dynamics and the relationship between those guys. And Michael was always sort of chomping at the bit and just waiting to become the mayor of the Ponderosa, as Tim Matheson called him in the later days. And at this time, his complaint was, and I would have to agree justifiably, that they were bringing in a new character who was very, very good looking, and he perceived him as a threat. And Michael, like many actors, was a little on the insecure side. If you look, Guy Williams was a pretty tall character, 6'1", 6'2", and in the scene where he's toe-to-toe, head-to-head with Lorne, I think Lorne is actually a tad taller, but then Lorne wore boots that had like 8-inch heels in them. But Guy was not happy, that's true. And it was principally because of Michael, and Lorne probably just went along with whatever Michael wanted. And Dan, I'd like to believe, was diplomatic and did the best he could under the circumstances and tried to act harmoniously and keep harmony on the set. And Purnell probably was indifferent because he figured that he would be leaving more sooner than later. Or perhaps at that stage, he was still ambivalent about what he was going to do because, as Gene pointed out earlier, he had a lot of financial obligations, including taking care of his parents, which had to factor into his decision-making process. And meanwhile, David Dortort, as I also said previously, had agreed to modify the format of the show significantly to have Adam's character get married, and hired Kathy Brown to play the woman who would eventually be Adam Cartwright's wife. And Adam Cartwright and Laura Dayton presumably would go off into the sunset, but not too far away, and would return in a recurring role, or would return recurringly from time to time. And to make up for the absence of Adam Cartwright, cousin Will Cartwright would be there. But again, all of this didn't sit well, principally with Michael Land. So two things happened. Felix Jackson, who's head of the programming department, announced there shall be no marriage for Adam Cartwright. And Guy Williams was feeling so miserable, and the other guys, led by Michael Landon, were so unhappy to have him around that David Dortort made the decision that Will Cartwright's days on the Ponderosa were also numbered. So how to resolve this dilemma? He had commissioned a 2-hour script, which would have been the first Bonanza movie, that was the marriage of Adam Cartwright and Laura Dayton. But that didn't happen because of what Felix Jackson wanted. And so Frank Cleaver, Bonanza story editor, and David Dortort again put their heads together and came up with what seemed like the best solution at the time. They have to get rid of cousin Will, and Laura cannot marry Adam, so why not have cousin Will marry Laura, and the two of them ride off into the sunset. So that's what happened. And yeah, it left a bad taste in Guy's mouth because it was not as pleasant as an experience as it could have been. And we have heard that the actors who played the Cartwrights could be kind of nasty. There's Ricardo Montalban's example on the bonus disc for the complete series box set, where he talks about his experience of working with the guys. And there are other examples where the guys were not behaving as nicely as they could have been, but when the cameras were on, they were magnificent. So I think the good thing, with the benefit of hindsight, is had Guy stayed on the Ponderosa, he would not have been available just a few months later when Irwin Allen was casting Lost in Space. And next to Zorro, I guess, Lost in Space is Guy Williams' signature role. But That is the long, convoluted, complex history of why we saw Guy Williams on the Ponderosa as cousin Will Cartwright for just a few episodes.
So of course the comment had come up about the brother's name. And as you pointed out that I guess it turned into John Aaron Cartwright because he's called Aaron.
It seems like I read some
Is that...
I read some publicity material that had him referred to as John Aaron Cartwright in connection with Bonanza, The Next Generation, and/or Bonanza, The Return. Yeah.
I had never heard the John before. I think I'd heard the Aaron before in the Return movies, but I don't know. We never actually, obviously he was dead, so I guess we never saw the brother. But as Dee would like to say, what a nice little nugget that if you were a Ben fan to go back and examine the brotherhood between Ben and Aaron, because that they talked about their dreams. I'd never heard that, but I thought, oh, if you're a fanfic writer.
So John, because in the actual show, he called him John.
Yeah, yeah.
So I would go with the John. The Aaron was those movies that were horrible.
Oh, no, I know I'm saying, but I had never heard him called John before because I don't ever watch this episode. So I was just shocked to hear that background between Ben and his brother, which was actually a nice surprise. It was another piece of a puzzle to basically the lineage kind of thing, or even a nice little nugget if you wanted to delve into Ben's growing up years. If you wanted to go that far back, it would be kind of interesting since they seem to go in very different directions. So I'm just saying. Will Cartwright didn't seem like a father figure to Peggy. Peggy needed to be with Adam. Agreed, Robin.
Yeah. Yes. Get rid of Laura, keep Peggy, and everybody's happy.
That would have been interesting if they had done that with the show, if they did need to bring in some youth and ended up. But of course, she would have had to leave the show with Adam. That would have been his thing. He would have been like NCIS. He went off to bring her up on his own as a single father. That would have been a nice.
Not to put a shameless plug in, but I actually wrote that story.
Oh, did you really? Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah. There's a twist in there that ends up Peggy getting with Adam. So, yeah, it came about. I don't know how, it just did. So nice. It's out there.
Excellent.
So,
Carrie said it makes. Carrie, go ahead.
I was going to say in my comments, I was just going to talk about that scene with Jamie where he stands up to the husband. Now, that's the episode where Jamie gets his first crush, his first love. And I'd actually forgotten about that scene. It's been quite a while since I've seen the episode, but to actually see him stand up to the husband and defend the woman's honor and virtue as any Cartwright would, but as just really putting the husband in his place for not seeing her as like he said, a good, wonderful woman and being so picky about everything she can't do. And I thought, man, Mitch was nailing it on that at that age. And I guess about 15, he was probably around 15 at that point. I'm not real sure, but I'm putting the Jamie character around 15 at that point because he looks like he's crossing over into more manhood there from a young teen. But it's just, I loved it. That was such a wonderful scene. And Jamie's definitely one I grew to appreciate when I rediscovered Bonanza in 2015. When I started seeing more and more of his episodes, I really then got a chance to meet Mitch in 2019. I really could appreciate more of the Jamie character. To me, he's not whiny. He's a tough kid. And they gave him Mitch played him very well. And I think they gave him some wonderful storylines to build, his tragic past and trying to move forward and trying to heal and be independent at the same time, which is how he grew up. So he's a great character.
Pony said, excellent insights, Robin. I agree.
Probably his best.
Thank you, Pony.
Yeah, I agree. And Mitch Vogel gets a bum rap, unfortunately. And I think had Bonanza continued, I think his character would have matured and gotten stronger. And certainly Mitch was as good enough an actor to pull it off. Mm-hmm. And he talked himself many times about the coming of age story that he was told was about to be produced where Jamie gets a gun for the first time, a handgun. And that would have been an interesting show to see.
Yeah, and Jamie was extremely smart. And boy, he could pull, I mean, there were times he could pull some of the thinking like Adam. Think around Ben and think around, Hoss and Joe sometimes, and come in from a totally different direction on something for his young age. And I think a lot of fan fiction have taken him on to getting, actually almost going to college like Adam did and following pursuits there, but going in a different direction. I think one story had him becoming a doctor or a veterinarian, something like that, but actually pursuing. And I've seen some stories that put him and Adam together where Adam returns. But I think that there was a lot of potential for that character to grow if the series had continued.
Thanks, Robin. I maybe somebody else did it too, but because of Jamie's love of animals, April and the crow and everything else, that I had Jamie going off to veterinary school to become a vet.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. I was trying to remember who wrote it. Thanks for clarifying that, Dee.
Oh, and somebody else may have as well picked up that thread.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah,
Right?
but well, thanks. Yeah, thanks for clarifying that because it was a great story.
Patina, did you have a comment?
Yeah, just something going back to Will, something else, just from Guy Williams' biography, that he and Michael Landon and Guy Williams' wife had gone to drama school together before Zorro, or acting school. And Guy Williams' wife and Michael Landon would meet up at Guy's house to do scenes. Guy and his wife had both been models, and his wife was a very attractive woman. And of course, Michael Landon, as Mr. Dortort's wife described him, had a face, blessed by heaven. So Guy Williams was jealous of Michael Landon and was always, worried about him making moves on his wife. So they had a history there, which I'm sure didn't help once, he got Bonanza. But I want to talk about Clem, because it's like Clem comes into his own in the later episodes. He appears sporadically, and I'm guessing that's because he either was in a well-demanded actor for a lot of movie roles, or was he under contract to a studio, so he couldn't appear in Bonanza as often as maybe the production team would have wanted him to. But he brings a good like comedic foil sometimes, and then sometimes he is like stern like Paul, like in Joe Cartwright Detective. I can't go arrest someone just because you think they might do something because you read this book.
Yeah.
I think that David Dortort tried out a number of actors during the first year to settle on a sheriff. Robert Falk was a sheriff for a few episodes, and in fact, Robert Falk, I think, played the deputy in a few episodes in the third year before Bing Russell came on the scene. Or no, I think Robert Falk was the third year, and Bing Russell appeared as the deputy sheriff for the first time in the fourth year. And the reason that we didn't see Bing Russell around a lot was because Virginia City already had a sheriff. It had Ray Teal. And I think that when a script called for a sheriff to be a little more hard-assed, like the one we saw with the twin played by Ron Hayes, who was the bad guy and who didn't want to go with the sheriff, and then he didn't want to go with the deputy. He couldn't remember what his name was. I don't see Ray Teal doing that kind of a scene. So I think it was wise on the part of the writers to have two sheriffs, two lawmen, the easygoing, very wise, grandfatherly Ray Teal, as Sheriff Coffey, and the hard ass, tough as nails, sometimes a little too tough, too hot-headed, Bing Russell as Deputy Clem, who could be, I guess, a little more easygoing as needed because, Bing Russell was a terrific actor. And I remember when I talked to him, he had some fond memories of the relationship that his character had with Little Joe. He said Little Joe was always giving Deputy Clem a hard time. And he gave as an example, and I don't remember now what the episode was, but Little Joe said words to the effect that, well, you know, he'll be there, or maybe he won't be there. And Clem said, don't give me any of that. If he's not there when I want him there, you're going to be in trouble, and you're going to have to answer to me. So you make darn sure that he's there when I want him there, and I'm going to go get him, and I'm going to find him there. And it was just funny that he recalled that they had that sort of good-natured banter. And I remember an episode where I think Little Joe says to Roy, he says, Roy, you take it easy. And Roy says, I'll do that. Don't worry. Because Little Joe liked to say, take it easy a lot. And then later, I saw this very recently when putting together a montage for something. Little Joe says to Clem, Clem, you take it easy. Clem replied the same way. Don't worry, I'll take it easy. You take it easy, which was funny. So I think that the company had a good solution to have two actors playing sheriff roles with a slightly different emphasis depending on the script. Hope that
Somebody had mentioned how Bing Russell was in The Long Night. Is it had on the IMDb the first two times supposedly you see Bing Russell, he's two different characters. He's not.
Well, that's true. And The Long Night was the third year, and he was not yet hired to be the sheriff, but that very well may have been his audition. What's a little more mystifying is in the seventh year, in The Other Son, at the opening sequence in the teaser, Ben Cartwright voiceover talks about a letter from his son Adam, who has the solution to the problem of the flooded mines, and the solution is nitroglycerin. So Ben is on horseback talking to a sheriff from a faraway town who says, you're not bringing your nitroglycerin through my town. You better go around. And that's Clem. And what's he doing talking to Clem? He's been talking to Clem for the last 2-3 years. But that's showbiz. So
he was in Honor of Cochise too, as that soldier that wanted to go after Cochise.
Right. Ginger said he had two roles before he became the deputy sheriff, where he was not playing the deputy sheriff, which is okay. I can understand that. But then to have a non-deputy sheriff role, well, he played a sheriff, but he wasn't playing Clem after he had already played Clem for a couple of years. That's what's a little.
Well, I pulled that clip, and it's what's weird about it is you're right, because he's sitting there with Ben and the wagon's in the middle of the desert, and Ben goes, I'm Ben Cartwright.
Yeah.
You're like, what? I think you've known each other
that's
for seasons. What do you mean you're Ben Cartwright? What are you, his evil?
well, that's why I suggested that clip, because I thought it was a good scene for Bing Russell. But you're right, he's
It
not
was just
playing
confusing, I guess.
Yeah, well, we got a pretty smart crowd here. Would they have been confused? I don't know.
Well, that was weird, but it wasn't as creepy as Geraldine Brooks playing horses in To Bloom for the. Absolutely can't watch that.
Yeah, that was too much. I could not take that. Geraldine playing his love interest. No,
I've only watched
that would freak me out completely.
It definitely creeped me out. Yep.
Yeah. The Bing Russell one with the sheriff and My Other Son, that's just a plain oops. That goes in the blooper reel.
Well, it is funny because he goes sheriff, and then he keeps going deputy, deputy, deputy. Like he says it 3 times. But the other weird thing is there's another scene later, and he's standing there, and I think Ben's standing there, and somebody else is, and they're all got the beige, like I don't know who the costume designer was, but they all had like the same vest on, the same colored vest. The same. It was like somebody had a sale on that particular style vest, and everybody got to wear them that day.
In that same episode where Bing wasn't Clem?
Well, where he says, you know, I'm going to have to take you into town, and the guy's like a twin or whatever. But there's another scene where he's wearing like it's the same as Ben's colored vest, and it's just weird because stands out, because later Clem's like again wearing the red shirt, black vest outfit, which we see pop up on so many different people, which is weird. Like Candy had that outfit, Clem had that outfit, Adam had that outfit. I guess they couldn't.
I can't remember the name of it, but that was the story with the two brothers, a good twin and a bad twin.
And interesting trivia in connection with that episode. Both parts were played by actor Ron Hayes, who is best known to some as the star of the Ivan Tors produced television series Everglades, and he fell in love with dear Betty Endicott on that episode, on the set of that episode. And Betty remembers working pretty closely with Ron in a dressing room because it was a little difficult to play a twin and another twin, and then the first twin impersonating the second twin. So it was complicated, and Ron apparently appreciated practicing and rehearsing and running lines with Betty, which led to them dating, and eventually they married.
And then didn't she leave the show when they got married? He didn't
Yeah,
want her.
because he wanted her to quit acting, and she did, and the marriage didn't last too long, not surprisingly, but yeah.
But I think he had 3 kids and she had 3 kids because she said like,
yeah, I think you're right.
The Brady Bunch.
Exactly.
Oh. I thought she at least stayed with Bonanza until Purnell left. I had always heard that.
Yeah,
that
well,
she left when he did.
Yeah, that's
or was at the same timing. Was at the same timing that she got married.
It was approximately the same time, and it's a good story, but it isn't true because if you look at some season 7 shows, she's there, and
she is. Oh, okay.
Not very many. I don't think you see her after season 7. So I guess with the hindsight or perspective of 20 years, maybe she sort of made an honest mistake. But she definitely was in shows after Purnell left.
She did show up in Trapper John, though.
Yeah, well, they were friendly.
I've seen her. Yeah, she showed back up in it. And when somebody told me that, I started watching, and there were a few. I said, "Oh my gosh, that's Betty." No, it's like you just don't see it because so many people are moving around the hospital. But suddenly you realize you recognize a familiar face as she walks by.
Melissa, I'm sorry to keep you waiting so long. Thank you for your patience, but with your permission, I'll just tell another Betty Endicott Trapper John story, which I think is apropos. And Ginger, I'm sure you know the story, and Carol, I'm sure you know the story. Betty Endicott was working on Trapper John as an extra and a stand-in, and they were doing some location filming at a Los Angeles hospital. And she looks around and she sees Michael Landon, who was there to visit his mother, who was a hospital patient on a fairly regular basis. And he said that he wanted to say hello to Purnell, and he wanted to sneak up on Purnell. So she was thrilled and pointed out where Purnell was. He was sitting in his director's chair reading a newspaper or something, and he sneaks up behind him and puts his hands in front of him and covers his eyes with his hands. And Purnell turns around, sees it's Mike, and exclaims, "Mike!" And according to Betty, they had a great reunion and sat down and chatted for an extended period of time until finally the assistant director said, we need to get back to work. So Betty was very happy to report that.
Yeah, I've heard that story too. That was
She told a lot of us that in 1999. We were at the ranch, and Mary Stone and I were there. And that's when she told us that story, because we were thrilled because you were hearing it live from Betty.
Cool.
Okay, Melissa, you're on.
Well, Andy, I really enjoy your stories, and coincidentally, this question is actually for you.
Hey, don't forget to turn off your camera. Turn on your camera.
Sorry. Hello.
Oh.
My question is actually for you. It actually concerns Ray Teal. I actually saw him. I watched The Best Years of Our Lives for the first time the other night, the film from the 1940s. And he was in that movie very briefly. And I was just curious, do you know how he got cast on Bonanza, or what that was like? Or
well, first let's talk about The Best Years of Our Lives, because it's a very powerful scene where he's talking to Harold Lewis, who plays the unfortunate soldier in real life during World War II, who lost his hands in a horrible munitions accident. And Harold Russell plays a GI, a veteran who has no hands, and he has a metallic apparatus. And Ray Teal plays a loudmouth. I think he's in a bar and he's saying some disparaging things. And Dana Andrews is the star of the picture, and he goes and he knocks Ray Teal on his behind for saying very, very stupid things. And Ray Teal was cast in Bonanza because he had a pretty solid, successful career as a lawman, as a bartender, as a cab driver, any number of things in the 40s, 50s. And as I mentioned earlier, David Dortord wanted a regular lawman, but had tried out several during the first year and the second year until he finally found Ray Teal. And actually, I'll correct myself. Ray Teal was in Showdown, which was the first episode of the second year. I forget now whether it was the first in production, but it was certainly the first one that aired. And Ray Teal is introduced as the sheriff. So David found his sheriff at the beginning of the second year. So he was experimenting in the first year. And why did he hire Ray Teal? Because he's a terrific actor, and he had played an effective sheriff in You Name the TV show. He was in Cheyenne, several episodes, and Wanted Dead or Alive, and just a lot of shows of the era, and also films. He was in a lot of Western films and non-Western films. But going further back in time, when he was a young man in the 1920s, he was a band leader. He was a professional saxophone player, and he led a band in Florida. And I guess it wasn't Glenn Miller or Duke Ellington famous, but very accomplished. And that's what brought him to Hollywood, being a professional musician. And I guess he found that he could make more money as an actor rather than a musician. But that's Ray Teal, our Ray Teal.
Awesome. Thank you. Wasn't he from Michigan?
Off the top of my head, I don't remember, but it sounds about right. I don't.
Okay.
But you could look him up easily to find out. But I wouldn't.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome, Melissa. Thank you, as always. I like how she pops in and out. Okay.
I just Googled it. Born in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Excellent. Very good.
Yay!
Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Melissa. You know your stuff.
That voice from beyond.
Yeah.
All right. So did anybody have any last comments, questions, concerns?
Ray Teal has a pivotal scene in North by Northwest, which was filmed just before Bonanza was released, with Cary Grant and James Mason. Yeah, I like Ray Teal very much. And in the bonus feature disc for the complete series set, you hear Bing Russell give a little testament to Pernell Roberts and to Bing Russell. Bing was not well, and so that's why he didn't appear in any season 14 episodes, and unfortunately he passed away in 1976. But Bing Russell says, this is not my office, this is Ray Teal's, and let us remember him and wish he were here. And then he says, I'd like to raise a toast to Pernell Roberts and all who helped me here and something. But yeah.
So Janet the Wicked said, at the start of Shining in Spain, little Joe stops a runaway stagecoach, which I think is one of the best stunts in the series. He runs alongside the lead horse, jumps up on his back, and slows the rig down. Do you have any interesting facts about this stunt? Even an uninteresting fact might be nice. Andy?
Sure. My interesting insight is it's little Joe who stops the runaway coach. Yes, it's not Michael Landon. Michael Landon would not be doing that. But I think if you watch the sequence, you'll see that although the stagecoach driver claims that it's a runaway and he can't control the horses, in real life, he can in fact control the horses and slows the horse down sufficiently that the stuntman can get in front of him and slow the horse down sufficiently after jumping on his horse. So that's pretty much how it's done. The driver of the stagecoach gently but firmly pulls back on the rein so the horse slows down enough for the stuntman to jump on the horse. And you could also undercrank the film so it appears that the stagecoach is going faster than it actually is. But it's a very good stunt. And thank you for asking that question. And I'm sure Bob Miles, if he was the stunt coordinator, would be very pleased that you liked it. I mean, it's tough to be a wrangler and a stuntman, but to be a stuntman who rides horses and who controls a stagecoach, any kind of a wagon with many horses, it's very challenging, to say the least. That's true.
I remember Alex Sharp telling me a story that the reason he became a stuntman is when he was in the army or whatever the branch he was in, they still had a cavalry. So he had learned to ride a horse because he was in the cavalry. And when he got out, I guess whoever the friend was that got him into showbiz said, "Can you ride a horse?" And he said, "I can't ride a horse." And that's how he got to be a stuntman, because he happened to ride a horse, because they still were doing a cavalry back in the day. For was way back in the day. Question for Andy: is there any chance of making a Bonanza documentary and release on DVD?
Good question. And in fact, dear Ginger and I put our heads together and talked about that possibility. But unfortunately, with various other time-consuming obligations, we were never able to do that to date. And it would have been a good addition to the DVD release. But again, hope springs eternal, and I am hopeful that someday the CBS Paramount will release a select group of episodes in high definition, in Blu-ray. Well, the episodes are available in high definition. They've been remastered into high definition digital format. You just have to have the right equipment to get the best visual effect. Although the compilations that Ginger and Carol put together, they look terrific. I'm sure you will all agree. These episodes, they just look fantastic. They look like they were made yesterday, some of them. But as far as a documentary in the future, my best guess would be in a future Blu-ray release. But it is a good idea, and thank you for asking. And the answer is yes, there is a chance. The one where Adam jumps off a moving stage onto a horse and falls off. He falls off what? He falls off a stage?
Is that A Dime's Worth of Glory? Is that the one? Which one is it when he?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of, but I don't remember.
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, that was Dime's Worth of Glory, and he gets out on the stage, climbs out through the window, and one of the guys is trying to go out there, get closer and shoot the driver. And so Adam jumps from the stage onto the back of the shooter's horse behind the shooter, and essentially falls off after that, but pulls the rider with him, and the horse goes running on. And there's a scene where he's supposedly balanced on the edge of the stage. He flings the door open, and he kind of is balanced on the edge of the stage to jump onto the moving racing horse.
Yeah, I remember it was a pretty impressive stunt, but I couldn't tell you with specificity how it was done and who did it and things of that.
I think they were cuts, and they're showing Adam,
probably,
Purnell ready to jump, the close up, and then when they cut to it, the stunt man jumps off onto the horse and tumbles over, and then you get back to Purnell on the ground fighting him. Most likely that's how they pieced it.
Yeah. I know that Purnell was not averse to doing stunts. He wasn't as gung-ho about them as Michael Landon was. But I think it was the Fear Merchants where Purnell is fighting the bad guy in the barn. And it's a fairly well-known actor whose name escapes me at this time, but that's all Purnell. And
fantastic. Yeah, it's a fight scene. It's incredible to watch him.
Very well choreographed, except for one little moment when you see the back of Purnell's hair popping up a little bit. But don't look at that, then it's fine.
That's true.
Dee, did you have a question?
I did. I had a question that I was going to ask Andy before we started, or before we put everything together, because in the gun segment yesterday, I didn't get to ask the question, but towards the later end of the episodes, end of the series, the men they stopped wearing guns when they were riding into town. And was that to do with after 68 and the Kennedy assassination and stuff like that?
Oh, I'm sure it was. Yeah.
I know it was like season 10 for 5 Candles. I think when Candy and Joe ride into town, they're not wearing their guns.
Well, I think that the assassination of Robert Kennedy and the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. within weeks of each other shattered the sense of security that the motion picture industry and the television industry had, which had gotten criticism before that for having too much violence. So any modicum of violence from that point on would have been curtailed severely from from executives at the highest level who received directives, strongly worded suggestions from the federal government. So yeah, that certainly would have been.
Yeah, I just didn't.
In light of cutting back on the use of guns and so forth, I had also heard or read that in High Chaparral, which was running at that time, around 1968 and all, that they were pretty much ordered, if they had their guns drawn, they pretty much had to be kind of pointed to the ground. They had to be careful when they drew them, you know, for the scenes and everything. But if they had to, for some reason, they had to kind of keep them pointing to the ground, you know, kind of angling downward while they're talking to the bad person, you know, rather than actually pointed directly at the person. They had to kind of keep that under control a little bit. But they had to run the scene with guns drawn because the scene called for it. But they had to find a way to do it with toning it down.
You know, speaking of firearms, Lorne Greene has blamed the abundant use of firearms on the Bonanza set for his loss of hearing in his later years. Because even if you have blanks and you have a half load or a quarter load, it's still an extraordinarily loud sound. And it's still not the sound that we hear because you have Bill Wistrom, the supervising post-production sound effects editor, go in and add the sound of gunshots. So given that they have to do that anyway, it's unfortunate that on the set, the guns which are loaded with blanks still have to make a sound loud enough to cause hearing damage. Hopefully they don't do that so much anymore, but I know that that's.
We talked about that.
Well, there's a lot they can do in post now with.
Yes,
the
certainly,
effects,
certainly.
but still the idea of the powder, though, I could see what they're saying. It gives it a more realistic effect if they at least have the
Right.
powder and then they can just
Yeah.
add.
Yeah, we talked about that yesterday.
Yeah. So the clip that Andy's talking about is there was a lot of talk about this clip called From Kingdom of Fear because Ben and Haas are wearing their guns on the wrong side. It's at the tail end of it, and it's when what's his name? Something Mulligan. What's the actor's name? Who's
Alfred Ryder.
Who is it?
Alfred Ryder is the sadistic fellow who's holding all of the men hostage, and
Okay.
Richard Mulligan,
Richard Mulligan,
who wants to kill him because he murdered his wife, or his wife committed suicide.
So what we're about to show you is that'll be the way the clip ran, and you'll see why. And then the clip will run again, where I've taken the two clips where they were reversed. In other words, where the guns are on the wrong side, to show you what it would have looked like if they had left it the way it was shot, which it was a continuity issue. And that's why you'll see the second shot. It looks weird because they would end up walking out one way and coming in the wrong way. So if that makes any sense.
So it wasn't in the oops.
In other words, it seems at first like it is an oops, but Ginger is arguing, and I agree with her, that it should not be an oops. It was done intentionally.
Right. That's why we didn't put it in the oops section yesterday.
Yes. So what should have been done was on the set have a shot of Dan and Lorne walking a certain way to correspond with the other character that they were talking to, but they didn't do that. So in the editing room, they decided to take the footage and reverse it. And to our trained eyes, it's obviously reversed because we know that Lorne Greene and Dan Blocker are right-handed, so they should have their guns on the right side of their bodies. But with the film reversed, the guns appear on the left side. And you would say, well, that's wrong. It's got to be a mistake. But as Ginger just explained, it isn't. And as you'll see, it has to do with who they seem to be talking to in the adjoining scene.
Because you'll see the guns go back to the proper side on the wide shot. But anyways, you'll see what I'm talking about.
We're all set to go, Paul. Divided the gold among the prisoners.
Well, it won't make up for what they've gone through, but at least it'll give them a new start.
They're waiting for me. I guess I better be going. I love you.
That was the scene as it aired. What it would have looked like if those two shots were reversed.
We're all set to go, Paul. Divided the gold among the prisoners.
Well, it won't make up for what they've gone through, but at least it'll give them a new start.
So as you see, they should have come in from the right side if it was the proper way that the shot was, but they came in from the left, so they had to. It's not so noticeable on the first shot, but noticeable on the second shot when they walk off the hill, because they should be coming in this way and they come in that way. So it was easier to just flip those two shots. Again, probably because they never figured people would analyze every single shot to the nth degree, as they say.
And do we know the history of that episode? That's kind of interesting. How it sat on the cutting room or in the cutting room for 2 years. It was filmed in 1968 and in June of 1968, and it didn't air until 1971.
And that's why Candy appears in season 12. It has one appearance or one credit in season 12, even though he wasn't on the series then, because they aired Kingdom of Fear then.
And the reason it was delayed was because of what we talked about earlier, the too many guns, too much violence, and this was a particularly violent episode, so they kept working on it in the editing room to make it sound less violent, to take away the most sadistic scenes. For example, at the end, it's not clear that Richard Mulligan kills Alfred Ryder. In the original version, it's pretty clear he strangles him with chains, but they cut that part out. And the dogs have a very loud, vicious sort of barking dog quality. And in the revised version, you hardly hear the dogs at all, especially when the dogs would chase after people and you would hear the sounds of them presumably ripping them and eating them limb from limb. So those were the kinds of changes that were made, and that's why the episode was delayed so long.
Welcome back, Jeremy.
Hey, Ginger. Nice to see everybody again. Yesterday, when I was talking with Andy and Henry and Larry, I failed to mention, and I should have, pertaining to Gunsmoke. There are two funny episodes of Gunsmoke. One black and white one, Chesterland, with Dennis Weaver, and I just wanted to mention that. That's the one where Chester falls in love. And he decides he's going to leave Marshall Dillon and he's going to move out onto the prairie and he's going to become a farmer. And he says, we don't need to have a house. He tells his bride, I'm going to build you a dugout, which is actually in the ground. It's a dugout. And it's just, I like the pathos in that. And he almost becomes pathetic in that episode, but you still root for the character. And at the end, his soon to be bride, she steals all of Chester's money and he has to come back to Marshall Dillon, and he to go back there. And the other episode, and I can tie this into Bonanza, but this is towards the end. This is A Quiet Day in Dodge. And if you think, that reminds me of A Good Night's Rest on Bonanza from 1965. if you remember where Ben has to go to town because he can't get any sleep. But in Gunsmoke's case in 1973, this is the one where Marshall Dillon, nothing goes right. And it's just really funny. He does a DVD commentary on the 50th anniversary DVD release of Gunsmoke, Marshall Dillon. And I just enjoyed that because he has a prisoner, Leo Gordon is his name, and he even stabs him in the arm. He can't go to sleep at all. A little boy gets locked in a bank vault, and they have to go wake up the marshal to try to get the boy out of the bank vault. Everything goes wrong. Margaret Hamilton, who was in The Wizard of Oz, you know, the Wicked Witch, she's in it. So those are two episodes of Gunsmoke that you could stack up with Bonanza. And if you ever watch that one, watch the one from Bonanza, A Good Night's Rest, and then watch A Quiet Day in Dodge and see if you think those two, how do they stack up to one another? Because they have a very similar concept.
I don't know if I should say I stand corrected. I mean, I'll stand corrected by saying that Gunsmoke did produce comedies, and certainly Jeremy has given us good evidence of two, just two. I don't think that The Were Elephant counts as a successful comedy. So I guess Bonanza is still in the lead when it comes to number of good comedy episodes.
Definitely.
That's funny. Thank you, Jeremy, for doing your homework, going back and doing your research on that. Or was it bugging you more because you like Gunsmoke better?
Bugging me since yesterday, yeah.
You're thinking, surely.
Oh, and the other quick thing, I guess, if you watch Purnell's episode, well, he did 2 episodes of Gunsmoke, but if you watch the first one from 1957, How to Kill a Friend, there's a commentary that John Rich he did on, I think it's Gunsmoke, like the director's collection that came out about 15 years ago. And if you go back and see that, Dennis Weaver, he challenges the director, and John Rich, he tells us in the commentary, he was doing a little cute scene that was supposed to be funny where he's sitting at a table and he's eating his food and he's supposed to be playing with the bread and putting gravy in it. And Dennis did not think that worked. And they had to shut down the set of Gunsmoke and talk this out. And it makes me think of another Bonanza actor, too, who was known to have exceptions to certain scripts and would challenge the director. So it's a shame that Dennis Weaver and Michael Landon never got to work together because they kind of had a sort of similar dispositions. And Dennis Weaver directed a little bit, but Michael Landon, he took that ability. And, of course, he exceeded Dennis Weaver by leaps and bounds with all of the scripts and all of the episodes of Highway to Heaven and Little House on the Prairie and Bonanza that he directed. But those guys were kind of similar, though, on Gunsmoke and on Bonanza. Dennis and Michael, their creativity, it went beyond the camera.
And you mentioned John Rich, a very accomplished director, not only in the drama Western milieu, but also situation comedies. He was the best director, arguably, for the Dick Van Dyke Show, and then later All in the Family. And he, to hear him tell it, hired Purnell Roberts to play the bad guy in How to Kill a Woman. And he goes even further in his autobiography to say that he had a New York actor come out to play this part because he was tired of just choosing from the relatively small pool of actors. And he heard about Purnell or had seen his work and had him come from New York to Los Angeles, which sounds very nice. And it's painful to watch Purnell's attempts to get, I think, off a horse. I don't think he tries to get on a horse in that episode. Of course, he got much better, but it looked like he had never been anywhere near a horse when he did that episode. And this was in 1957. And I don't know, maybe Gene could correct me, but as far as I know, Purnell came to Hollywood because he was recruited by a talent agent who wanted him for Desire Under the Elms, either to play the part or to audition to play the part. And it makes more sense that he would have come out for a major motion picture and not for an episode of Gunsmoke, although it was a prestigious television series, but it was just its first year. So you have to sometimes take these stories with a grain of salt, but I don't know if Purnell ever mentioned exactly what brought him to Hollywood. But
I think it's just like you said, it's kind of like that's history. He came out for Desire Under the Elms to do the audition, and he stayed. He stayed.
Thankfully.
He came out with his girlfriend and had an apartment in Hollywood somewhere. And he, one thing after another, and then he ended up on Ride Lonesome, where he was like number 2 on the show, on that movie, which was quite a step up for somebody that essentially just arrived in Hollywood to land that role. And I noticed that he had his accent in Ride Lonesome, and he had that in the first couple of episodes of Bonanza, and then he got rid of it, which was an improvement, in my opinion. I want to say one thing about Gunsmoke, though. There are some fabulous funny episodes. My absolute favorite is with Ken Curtis and Burt Reynolds, and they were always at each other. And they go to buy this new part because Festus had destroyed Quint's bellows or something in the blacksmith shop, and so they go off together. Except that Quint does not know that Festus has hung on underneath the wagon to go with him, because Quint just wanted to go by himself. And the rest of it is just hysterical as they're trying to. I think vie for the position of who's the boss on this particular run. And in the end, they end up destroying it again. But the one really cool statement that they make, they're having a beer in the saloon, and when they were finished with the bottles, and it's like a whole bunch of bottles there, and Festus says, "Hey, you know what these are called, right?" And Quint, who's a half-breed, says, "Yeah, dead Indians." And you don't hear that very often, but that's an old slang for empty beer bottles. Dead Indians. So there you go.
And
thanks, Gene. That's got Comanche's Assault up for 1964. Now we have 3 funny Gunsmoke episodes. Thank you.
And
there are a bunch of them, but they generally have Festus in them, because he just exudes funny.
Yeah.
So.
Well, they always have the lighthearted banter between Doc and first Chester, and then later Doc and Festus. Not necessarily in a funny episode, but they're always there for comedic effect, for comic relief, I would say. Yep. And Jeremy, I think you said that you plan to commit to writing your family genealogy, and you're going to trace and prove how, in fact, you and Purnell share a common ancestor. Let me see if I remember this. Purnell's great-great-grandfather is your great-great-great-great-grandfather. Did I get that right?
That should make us 4th cousins twice removed. William Henry Roberts was his name, yes.
There you go. Jeremy's the missing branch. he's the next branch that's going to stem off.
Branch? Yeah.
Branch.